All right, no singing, no dancing, no hat. I'm losing pieces for my intro here for the MMA Prospectus with my co-host Tom Grant. Those of you who watched the Vivisection earlier got the full singing, dancing, hat wearing version of me. That experience is gone, dead. Like it was there for a moment and now it's gone. So if you savored it, I hope you did because I'm not
What
doing it again.
what the hell is going on the vivisections?
Hey, I'm here to have a good time. I can't help it, you know. I got to do me. I got to be me. And if me wants to sing a little and dance a little and wear a hat, fuck it, you know. I got to do my thing.
Rock on, whatever floats your boat.
That's right. That's right. Nobody, don't be out there trying to cramp my style, world. I won't stand for it. Um, Anyway, we are here to talk prospects this time around, and we got to talk last week. We got some big stuff to talk about there. Got some fighters to talk about for this week, and some guys out in the regional scene. If you are up for young promising fighters in the MMA world, we got some good shit for you going on this week. There are a couple of cards to watch that you got to pay attention to. So, on that note, first and foremost, Tom, UFC on Fox, Johnson versus Bader. We tried to tell people.
We tried. We tried.
We did.
They don't listen, Zane.
No.
No, no. So obviously, Sage Northcutt. The first thing I'm going to say is, I kind of obviously I think I put out a tweet just kind of like breaking down the different reasons why he tapped to that choke, and then I got to look at it at a different angle. The choke appeared to be 100% legitimate, like that he did not like panic tap out of that. That was a real choke. So I'm not on that bandwagon of that. It was really more obviously Sage Northcutt won the first round. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Looked good for a round. This is and I can feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse because I listened to former MMA Prospectus member Patrick Wyman talking about this on his show with Connor Rebush. This is the quintessential prospect submission loss. He won the first round against a really fucking tough, really hard nosed guy who came out strong in the second round. It sounds like there are some issues with Sage Northcutt's health. I don't really care about that, to be perfectly frank. Like everyone has an issue coming out of camp. Some of them are more serious than others. It sounded like his was fairly serious, but he got in the cage and he fought and he won the first round. So I don't really know how
Yeah.
much that played in. Barberena got him down, and some of the issues with Sage Northcutt's grappling that we pointed out last week came home to roost. He really doesn't have much of a bottom game. He's really more of an explosive athlete when he's grappling more than a technical guy. And when Barberena forced him to play for a long period off of his back, he didn't have a technical answer. He got exhausted. And then just really had he pretty much had his guard game was non-existent, and he got choked from a position he really probably shouldn't have been choked from.
I would even be willing to say that for a great athlete, he's not even explosive off of his back in trying to get up. He's really very accepting of just being on his back and losing time.
Yeah, I mean, his top game and his wrestling are very explosive, not
Yeah.
super technical. And then when you put him on his back, yeah, the technicality isn't there. And then the explosion is just curiously missing. He seems caught in between wanting to play guard and wanting to stand up, and he'll just hang out there with his guard open, not really doing anything,
Yep.
which is, I mean, a sign of an inexperienced guard player. I mean, that is
Yeah.
something that you see from very inexperienced guard players.
Yeah, I was going. I have in plan, and it's taking me some time because I'm going through the whole UFC roster and finding all of their most inexperienced fighters. Of rounding of doing an op-ed on this, just the idea that like we have to remind people inexperienced fighters are almost always not good.
Yeah,
Like you watch enough tape on guys, you almost never see a guy in the first year or two of his career where you're like, oh man, that's an amazing, well-rounded performance. More often than not, you find a guy that you think looks, we figured out what we want to look for. We're looking for great athletes first and foremost, maybe with one deep technical skill base. And you get excited and you try to show somebody else that footage and like, he doesn't look very good. He looks kind of shitty. And it's just like, yeah, but he's been fighting for a year.
Yeah.
We're not, the reason we named Kamaru Usman our number one welterweight prospect, and he went on to win tough and has gone on to do well in the UFC, was not because he looks like a completely awesome finished product. It's because he was a D2 national wrestling champion who has an insane athletic ability.
Yeah, it's interesting because I say all this. I'm still completely confident Sage Northcutt becomes a ranked fighter in the lightweight division, just purely based on what an athlete he is. Mm-hmm. Everything that we're talking about, everything that was deficient in this fight, he can learn.
Yeah,
he can learn inside of a year and a half.
And he's now committed to going full-time to TriStar, which is a fantastic move.
Yeah, it's a fantastic gym. Faraz is an excellent coach. Faraz is exactly one of, like, if you take a Sage Northcutt, a fairly raw, pure athlete, and you listed off the coaches you would pick for a guy like that, Faraz Sahabi is probably in everyone or most people's top 3.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, I would not be surprised if we saw Sage Northcutt a few months from now, if he gets back in the cage after 3-4 months at TriStar, if he gets taken down, if he just pops right back up to his feet, doesn't even bother playing guard anymore, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him doing it like he'd been doing it for years after a few months at TriStar.
Yeah, I mean he has the kind of raw athletic potential of a guy like Magomed Mustafayev.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen what Mustafayev has been able to do, not even necessarily with better training, but just with more experience, like more time in the gym, better training partners, certainly, and just more experience. Now you look at that guy in the UFC, and he's just a monster.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this is, in the end, is good for Sage Northcutt. It got him off that Phenom track. We haven't talked about the Phenom track in quite a while, but there's a lot of pressure on that.
Yeah.
I mean, you start running off wins and they just jump your competition up, 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 up. The further you go along that Phenom track, the harder it is when you lose, because you hit a tier. There are some tiers that once you cross over, even if you lose, the UFC doesn't want to step you back, and they'll keep having you fight fighters of that level. And if you're not ready for it, it can really do. I mean, the example I always think of is Charles Oliveira.
Yep.
Well, Charles Oliveira got kind of fast-tracked, and then he was fighting nothing but elite fighters when he probably needed a few more kind of mid-tiered tune-up-y fights.
Yeah.
So I think this is good for Sage Northcutt. They can give him bottom half of the roster fighters for another year, build him back up. Fans won't be so willing to jump down his throat now, and he can kind of learn and be a slightly more regular fighter.
And they've already, interestingly, it's already kind of showing up that he's already won over a lot of fans, and that, like, yeah, I saw a lot of backlash among like hardcore fans on Twitter and stuff like that. But comment sections about Sage Northcutt, like, people were really forgiving.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh no, he's just a baby, and it'll all come along." And he was sick, and I think he's just too nice to lie, and that doesn't sound like an excuse and all that. It's like, I think I can't remember. I think it was Jordan Breen that said if it was Tim Sylvia telling you that he had strep throat,
yeah, that wouldn't be good. That would be
nobody would cut him an ounce of slack.
No, well, it isn't. Yeah, the backlash we've seen against it is mostly the people who also complain that the UFC doesn't build stars anymore. And then anytime the UFC tries to build a star, they just have this huge backlash to whoever the UFC gets behind. It's MMA fandom. It is what it is.
Well, they do always seem to pick the white, blonde, blue-haired or blue-eyed ones.
yeah, there is that. There is that.
Anyway, other prospect fight on this card. Good one to watch. One that I picked correctly, I'm very happy to say, was Carlos Diego Ferreira versus Olivier Abend Mercier.
Ooh.
Both of these guys started fighting in 2011. obviously Hera's a few years older than Abend Mercier, already in his early 30s. But this was the first real grappling test of Abend Mercier's career, and he didn't pass it.
No, that was a rough fight for Mercier because his A game is obviously clinch, takedown, take the back, and then either choke or ride you out for the round. And that wasn't really an option against CDF. Just a really high-level ground fighter. And belt rank doesn't mean that much in MMA. We have quite literally seen a white belt tap out a world champion black belt.
Yep.
So in the end, it doesn't mean that much. But when they got in there, it was really obvious that Hera had the advantage on the ground and that he had the advantage on the feet. I mean, that there really wasn't really anywhere for Mercier to go. He just got kind of veteran in this one, despite the fact that they started fighting around the same time. CDF had the much more veteran-like performance where Abend Mercier kind of was the prospect who ran out of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that Hera, especially in the right matchups, when he's not facing somebody that can stuff his takedowns and then be the better technical striker than him, he's still a very dangerous fighter. Like, you have to be a better technical striker than Hera to beat him. And while he's certainly going to run into a lot more of that at lightweight, that's not going to be everybody. And if guys that are just better wrestlers or just better grapplers or just equally good grapplers can have a hell of a time fighting him because he's a pretty well-rounded fighter.
Yeah, and it really, to me, like the difference in poise and the difference in like how they conducted that match just spoke volumes to me. I left really, really impressed with Hera, and I'm still hopeful on Mercier. Like this is again, we talk about like classic prospect losses. When they lose decisions, it kind of tends to look like this, where they run into a guy they can't work their A game against, and their B game isn't quite good enough either, and they just kind of run out of tricks.
Yeah, I mean, Abend Mercier, he got outworked. It's not like it's not a loss that is necessarily. It's not a terrible loss for him, but it is a sign like he did get beat at his best game, and that's always a problem. Like you never want to lose at what you do best.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here because he has to obviously he has to get better at his best skill as well as his other skills because he can't just become more well-rounded and more generic. That's not going to help anybody. He has to become a better grappler, and he also has to pick up his striking, obviously, because he's not a competitive striker.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the big notable prospect to fight on this card as well, Randy Brown. And
looked much better than I thought he was going to.
Yeah, I picked him to win. I thought he would beat. I thought Dwyer on paper had the advantage, but I thought that Brown would just somehow hype would carry him through this fight. But he did well. Like he did really well to adjust after some trouble early and weather a bad storm and come back and take over the fight. And that's a really great win for a young prospect because that shows he didn't run out of ideas. Like he did not just get stuck trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, the mid-fight adjustments won him that fight. And that to me was really, really impressive. That shows really excellent poise, really excellent like fight IQ, especially for how young he is. That was what it really stood out to me. Obviously, the rest of his skills actually looked better than I expected them to look. And overall, it seems to be a really solid find for the UFC.
Yeah, he's a guy that he might shoot up the ladder faster than Sage Northcutt, frankly, just because he seems to have a bit more on the ball when it comes to adjusting in the fight and to being resilient. And I don't want to say that it's not that like Northcutt isn't tough thing or anything like that, but it is the idea that Brown in this fight did get put in some bad positions and he was able to rally really well.
It speaks well of him as a fighter. And man, just like two good hits off of this looking for a fight show so far.
Yeah. He's also 6 years older than Northcutt, so,
There's
that he's not less of a prospect. He just started fighting in 2014, but it may explain a lot of his better and deeper.
But he also has been fighting amateur another 2 years on top of that. So
Yeah,
he is more experienced. He is older. So all that likely helps him out.
yeah. I expect to see Brown do better, and it looks like, especially with a win over Dwyer, who's a solid bottom rung welterweight for the UFC. Like, that to me suggests a lot better that Brown will be able to slowly build his way up the UFC in the way that the UFC likes to build guys.
Yeah.
Like, if they keep matching him up with people with similar experience and similar records in the promotion, he'll be able to handle that. Whereas Northcutt's first two wins, they really did not tell us anything or suggest, especially his Pfister win, did not suggest at all that he would be able to handle a step up in competition.
Yeah. No. It was a really positive showing, and it got me excited to see him fight again. And I was very skeptical of him coming off the regional scene.
Yeah. Otherwise, Levon Makashvili put up a mediocre performance against Damon Jackson. Really didn't take over this fight as well as he should have.
And then gave away the win.
Yeah.
Just
With
with fouls. And I think it was the right call to take a point there.
Yep.
Is it noteworthy that Mark Ratner was like utterly befuddled that like what, like a fighter committed two different fouls and we're taking a point? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, no, it was really weird. It felt to me like a real indictment of just how little the internal structure of MMA, commissions, judges, refs, officials, how little interest they have in seeing fighters penalized for fouls. Like, that really spelled it out to me, was just this complete disbelief that a fighter could be penalized for multiple infractions in a fight.
But Zane, he didn't mean it.
I know.
There was no intent. He didn't mean to be hurtful.
Otherwise, also, in good news, before we move on, last bit of good news for prospects on this card, Tony Martin got a really good win, and I'm really happy to see that over Felipe Oliveira, who they brought in as like a 9-year vet, Oliveira, so he was coming in like, basically a finished product.
Yeah, tough regional scene guy.
Yep. And Martin got a good, tough win over Oliveira, and that's nice to see because Martin's a dude that, like, I don't know that he has less potential than, Randy Brown or Sage Northcutt or some of those other guys. He's maybe not quite the elite athlete, but he's a skilled power grappler, and he just got thrown to the wolves in his UFC career. This is
he got a tough go.
Rashid Magomedov, Beneil Dariush, like, first two fights. That's a pretty impossible task for a really young, inexperienced fighter. So I'm glad to see Martin come back, get a win here, keep his UFC career alive, and hopefully continue to improve off that.
Yeah.
Also, on a quick note, Bellator last week, Chris Honeycutt got knocked the fuck out against Paul Bradley in the rematch of their bout.
Oof, that was bad.
Yeah, Honeycutt got pretty sloppy with his hands. Again, I think he stung Bradley in there. At some point, landed a good clean shot, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly, and then got really over aggressive and overexcited about it. And Bradley is a tough as shit, really seasoned vet. Like, this is a dude who has been knocked out once by body shots by Luke Rockhold in 2010.
Yeah, it's a tough fight, and I know back to back against a guy like that is tough for a young guy like Honeycutt. And it's tough matchmaking. Honeycutt will most likely be back, but that's a rough one.
Yeah,
that's a confidence breaker. Like, they're gonna have to build him back up a little bit from that.
And also worth noting, Tony Johnson, a.k.a. heavyweight, one-time very bright heavyweight prospect, is still rolling. He beat Rafael Butler by TKO. So Bellator seems to be resurrecting him nicely. moving on to next week now, and this UFC card in front of us, Hendricks versus Thompson, and we've got one big obvious prospect fight on the card, and that's Ray Borg versus Justin Scoggins.
Yeah, that should be a barn burner. That one's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I kind of worry that Justin Scoggins is going through his own Charles Oliveira treatment via the
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, because just based on his matchmaking, whenever I look at Scoggins, I don't even think of him as a prospect anymore. And then I look at how long he's actually been fighting. And I mean, we're up to like 4 years at this point, and it's just incredible, like the matchmaking he's gotten.
Yeah.
And part of that is probably just flyweight. That it's such a shallow division right now that if you're somewhat talented and intriguing, that you're going to get tough fights very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, this Ray Borg fight, I just hope that it's a fun, competitive 3-round scramble fest because it should be a fun fight. Scoggins has the ability and the talent to take a pot-shotting decision from the outside if he can really stay smart and fight a smart fight. But Borg is so fast, and Scoggins is a very willing wrestler. And the moment Scoggins, I think, tries to out-wrestle Borg and tries to take him down and ground and pound him or out grapple him, as Scoggins has done in the past with other fights, I think that's where he ends up losing this bout. So it should be an interesting fight for both men, but it'll be interesting to see which of these two prospects comes out with another loss because they're both guys that obviously have a future as top 10 fighters in the division, but because the division's so shallow, they are being forced together. Like all the top young talent is being forced together early and often for flyweight right now.
It's the kind of division where we're going to see a lot of trilogies.
Yeah.
But I don't think you need to worry. I think having a scramble fest of a fight is something that we're going to see because it's a Ray Borg fight. Like,
yeah.
He creates that.
He does. He's too fast usually for guys to just stay away from him, even if he's not a very good striker. He can close distance well, and then obviously he just is absolutely terrific on the ground. So that should be a fun one. Noah Lahat's fighting, but interestingly, Noah Lahat's kind of a funky pseudo prospect. He's 31 already, and he's been fighting since 2008. He just hasn't fought that many times.
So, it's a weird one. He's been around a lot longer than you would think. I mean, his UFC debut was on Shogun Henderson 2.
Yep.
So it's a weird one. Yeah, as you said, he's just not been super active. I really enjoy watching him fight just because he is a fantastic transitional grappler. So I just enjoy the hell out of his fights, and I'm excited to talk about him whenever we can, just because a slick ground grappler coming out of out of AKA is. I'm always down to watch that, but I agree he's kind of approaching the point where you're wondering like, when are we going to stop seeing the improvements, and when is he just kind of going to be? And we may have already. I mean, he may just be the guy he is at this point.
Yeah, it could be one of those things where people thought, oh yeah, here's this really bright young prospect. He's going to be great coming up. And it's like, well, no, actually, he's just kind of is who he is. And that's pretty good. And he'll fight for a while like that. But it'll never be a top 15 talent kind of guy, just a scrappy mid-card action fighter.
Yeah. But hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You can make some good checks doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, light heavyweight prospect fight, rare one, Misha Serkinov, Alex Nicholson. Serkinov being one of the more legit, surefire top 10 light heavyweight prospect guys that the UFC has picked up. And Nicholson I expect Serkinov to win this pretty handily, but Nicholson's a brawler. Like, he's a tough dude that is ugly, but he will, I was talking to Connor Rubish about this earlier today, and Connor was saying he's the kind of guy that he just wants to hurt you. Like, he doesn't care about the rest of his game. He's just in there to try and cause you pain.
Yeah, it should be a fun matchup. I do expect it to end fairly quickly. As I think Serkinov's going to get the win. I have this card. This card's interesting because I feel like there's a fair amount of there's some really favorable matchups on this card for younger fighters. Lahat's matchup is
Yep.
pretty darn favorable. Rivas really doesn't have that much of a ground game, and he's smaller than Lahat.
Yeah,
And
I'd say Lahat is the biggest lock on this card of any
yeah,
fight.
yeah, and Serkinov just Alex Nicholson really likes to fight in the clinch and likes to hurt people in the clinch, and that is Serkinov's best place. Like he's gonna get thrown on his fucking head if he hangs out in the clinch too much with Serkinov. I mean, maybe he has an answer for it. I've been wrong enough that I never throw out the possibility that I'm just a moron. But Nicholson, the way Nicholson plays in the clinch, seems like Serkinov's gonna get him down pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, Nicholson, like Northcutt, Nicholson is one of the absolutely most inexperienced fighters in the UFC right now.
Yeah.
So he's not very good. Like that is how that story works. He's only been fighting for a year and a half. He is not a good fighter. He could be. He's aggressive and he's tough, and those are like, and he's actually a good athlete. He's aggressive, tough, and a pretty good athlete, and those are like the three building blocks required to be a decent UFC fighter in the long run.
Yeah, Serkinov's interesting because he's almost like a light heavyweight Jimmy Rivera. Like he came off the regional scene fairly finished, which is incredible considering how thin light heavyweight is. Serkinov's ready to do some work in this division. I mean, he ran through Daniel Jolly. Like zero problems with Daniel Jolly. I don't see why Alex Nicholson's going to give him any more trouble than Jolly. And I'm wondering is UFC slow playing him to try to build him up? Are they just not sure what they want to do with him? Because it seems like he's getting too like an easy ramp into the UFC, and then I'm going to be interested to see what happens next if he gets this win.
All right, 3 last prospects or guys on the borderline of prospectdom. First of all, Jared Rosholt. Do you think he's going to beat Roy Nelson?
Jared Rosholt, will he beat Roy Nelson? That one's a tough one. Probably. I think Nelson's on the downslide in a big way. I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think Rosholt's probably catching him at the right time to just press him into the fence, wear him out, and have a peak Jared Rosholt performance in this, and just like absolutely kill any interest in this card before the main event.
Also, how good does Stephen Thompson have to look against Johnny Hendricks to be a success?
This could be a sneaky good matchup. I think Thompson, like he gets portrayed as like this karate dude in MMA, like this from like a weird karate rule set. But I mean, he's been fighting MMA for 6 years at this point. He's an MMA fighter. I mean, he has built himself a fairly decent skill set. It's been like what? It's been like 4 years since he got handled by Matt Brown, and we've since found out that getting handled by Matt Brown is nothing to be ashamed of in that division. I think this could be a sneaky good matchup in which Stephen Thompson acquits himself very well, or maybe even pulls out kind of a surprising decision if Johnny Hendricks, who is always game to fight, but Johnny Hendricks in the past has struggled knowing when to turn it on at times in 5-round fights. I think there's a possibility that Wonderboy walks away with like a split decision here.
I would be pretty shocked if Wonderboy won it, but I think this is a fight that he's very likely to take to a decision and get a lot of credit for doing so.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely outcome.
I think fan expectation is pretty low here. It seems like to me. Maybe not, but that's kind of my feeling. And otherwise, Shawn Spencer, Mike Pyle. This might be. I feel like this might just be the point where Shawn Spencer's game really clicks, and we see him just beat the piss out of Mike Pyle.
Yeah. I think that's a fair. Mike Pyle, man, he's always game. He's the new Chris Lytle.
Yeah, but he's also 40 and he's been fighting for 17 years.
Yeah, there is that, and then the rest of this card we just got some like Alex White's young but not fantastic. He's also missed a year, like been out for a full year at this point. So, Mickey Gall, like coming straight off the regional scene, like that. Yeah. I mean, is that fight anything other than the winner gets CM Punk?
No, it's not even the winner gets CM Punk. It's Mickey Gall gets CM Punk if he beats Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson has nothing on the table.
Oh,
so,
that fight, don't expect much.
I'm trying to ignore that fight and pretend it doesn't.
Don't go running to log on to Fight Pass to watch that one. Yeah. Just give him time to see Lahat throw some crazy ass submission on Diego Rivas.
Yeah, we should talk about some regional fights now, because those are going to be better than whatever else is going on there. First and foremost, Legacy FC, number 6 scouted bantamweight for a list we never released. Ricardo Lucas Ramos is fighting. Dude is a tiny Brazilian buzzsaw in the main event, and it says versus unknown fighter. I hope they found someone for him, because that dude is awesome, and I want to watch him fight.
Yeah, he's a little tornado of pain. Super aggressive. Really, let's see, where are my old scouting notes? Super aggressive, really good athlete. Pretty good striker at range considering his youth, and pretty strong in the clinch as well. Just aggressive is pretty much how I sum him up right now. He's athletic. He's putting together some technique. I haven't really been able to see much of him in Legacy, but on the Brazilian regional scene, he was a terror.
I just watched his Cody Walker fight, and Cody Walker had to be like 6 inches taller than him. He's 6'1". I don't know how that dude makes bantamweight, but 4 inches taller. And Ricardo Ramos just ran through him, absolutely blitzed him. And the thing is that he looks like I kind of think of him like a mashup of Thomas Almeida and Charles Oliveira, without being quite as singularly good at grappling or striking as either of them.
Yeah.
But he's a plus grappler and a plus wrestler and a plus striker comparatively, and just absolutely unchecked aggression.
Yeah. He actually kind of reminds me a little bit of just go within the division. He reminds me a little bit of Renan Barão, like earlier in his career, when Renan Barão was more of a take you down and submit you sort of dude, who was also happy to brawl on the feet a little bit.
Yeah, I can very much see that.
He looks like a Nova União guy when he gets in there and fights. Like his style is very beginning of Nova União's career, when they are more jiu-jitsu fighters than they are Muay Thai guys, and then they kind of slowly add the striking to their game. Yeah, that armbar on Legacy 46 was brutal.
Oh, didn't Raider retire from MMA too? He was one of the guys that ended Justin Raider's career, I believe.
I think he was the guy that just blasted Raider into next.
Yeah, Raider got knocked out again after that, and then I think he decided to call MMA quits.
Did Raider retire?
Maybe not.
Did. Huh?
Did he? I thought he did.
He might have. I didn't keep up with it. He hasn't fought since June.
Yeah, he hasn't fought since getting knocked out. I thought he might have called it good. I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, feel free to tell me.
It's hard to know in an ADCC year. Like maybe he called it quits. Maybe he just switched focus to trying to get into ADCCs, and he's going to be back this year. I'm not really sure.
So the other card I want to talk about real quick while it's going on this weekend, this is on the 6th, is Absolute Championship Berkut ACB 29 in Poland. If you want to watch prospects fight, this is the card for you. This is like a fantastic matchup of all of the usual, Caucasus Russians the ACB is known for, with a bunch of Polish dudes, and that country is overflowing with quality action fighters, all put together on one card. Most notably in the main event, Zelim Khan Umiev, heavyweight, that dude looks like a absolute killer. I'm not obviously my past love of heavyweight prospects from Russia has gotten me in trouble. So I don't want to
You know what?
overstep myself, but
Nikita Krylov is panning out. Not
yeah,
as a heavyweight, but he's panning out.
he is. But Zemel Khan is amazingly aggressive, and the first thing was like I showed Tom a link to one of his fights here, and the dude moves like a welterweight.
He
Like
is fast.
he is amazingly light on his feet for 240 pounds, an amazingly fast kicker, and just powerful and strong. He's 5-0 right now, and I will be surprised if he does not end up being a very good future heavyweight.
Yeah, the biggest things that I saw briefly that I would say, yeah, speed is number one. The dude is stupid fast for a heavyweight.
Yeah,
Really powerful. It looks like just kicks hard, throws hard, even for a heavyweight. And then just is a madman on the ground. Like not really technical, but just trying to knock your head in.
yeah,
So I think moving forward, I think the biggest questions for him in the heavyweight division as it is counter wrestling. Is he going to be able to stay off of his back or get up when he gets takedown, and then working from top position, because you're not going to be able to just throw like if you make it to the UFC, there's only a certain number of dudes you'll be able to throw their legs aside and do like Donkey Kong hammer fists
yeah.
on a guy. So some things to grow in his game, but Jesus, what an athlete and what a killer!
Yeah, and I mean he's started in 2014. He didn't even fight last year, so he has 1 year of pro fights on his record. So obviously, tons of growth potential there. Somebody to watch.
Beast in the making.
Yeah, obviously he's not really a prospect at this point, but Musa Hamanayev is fighting on that card. He's a really good fighter. Yusuf Raisov, though, Boars, he has been passed down the mantle of Adlan Amagov's nickname.
Ooh.
And he's not quite the athlete that Amagov is, but he is exactly the same kind of power slinging kickboxer where just constant aggression, everything coming forward. He's a bantamweight, I believe. No, featherweight. He's a featherweight. Probably will have to move down to bantamweight. He's not a big featherweight, but everything he throws is just with deadly intentions. Fearsome kicker, got that same just kind of instant power spinning back kicks, things like that. Great action fighter. So big things to expect out of Raisov. And also worth noting, I mean, there's some other fights against some guys that are, have yet to prove a lot. You got just the usual Russian cordon of fighters that look like they might be talented. Some guy like Ustar Magomed Gadjidov, who's 7-2, or Adam Zajas out of Poland, who's 8-2-1, and Shamkhan Barakanov, who's 4-0. Lots of guys like that. But also down on the bottom of the card is Damian Smigilski, and he looks like a really good, fun, scrappy action fighter. Good everywhere, really aggressive, good clinch fighter. Could be a really fun talent. He's 6-1. So this is a card that's just got a bunch of young guys that you should expect to see some highlight performances come out of this.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an effort to try to watch this one. I have no idea what time it's gonna be on in the States. I'm trying to find that out right now.
Yeah,
ACB cards tend to be on in the morning.
I think a lot of them end up on YouTube, like full thing, pretty quickly afterward too.
Yeah,
so.
And usually Caposa usually has the old link for the live stream when it goes up. So up on Twitter. So I'm definitely gonna be checking that out. I got some time on my hands this weekend, so I'm gonna be watching some of the MMA.
Final note worth noting: over on World Series of Fighting, I believe it's Global Conquest. I want to say Is that the name of this? Global Championship. Never mind. World Series of Fighting Global Championship, one of their international branches that may be suing them. They're putting on a card in Japan, which has a bunch of notable regional talents. Yevgeny Arokin, who's pretty good. Some, Hisei Watanabe and Richard Odoms, who was almost in the UFC. But most notably, it has Teddy Violet is fighting Michihiro Omagawa. Violet's only loss is to Tom Duquesnoy by triangle choke. Just started fighting in 2012, coming off the French circuit, has been doing really great lately. And he's fighting a really good seasoned vet in Michihiro Omagawa, who's now coming off a 3-fight win streak over the past couple of years. So that could be a real interesting fight. Violet's certainly one to watch, and somebody I expect that if he wins a fight like this could easily be in the UFC. So that's the last fight to pay attention to this weekend.
It's a full weekend. Should be a good set of prospect fights, and then a decent UFC card. Nothing fantastic, but still worth watching, especially since it's going to be on cable.
Absolutely.
I have one question for you though. Now that it's an off pay-per-view, are we going to get like a quick paced FS1 card, or are we going to get like the terrible, awful? Is this going to go till 2 in the morning?
Let's see, it's 6 fights. It should be probably 4 hours for 6 fights.
It's starting at 9 o'clock Central Time, which is like the usual time for pay per view.
It'll be done at 1 a.m.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I should like DVR the end of this one. I'm like actively trying to not watch like 8 hours of MMA on a weekend anymore, just because. God, the last Fox card, like I didn't watch the Fight Pass cards. I went back and watched them during the lulls in the FS1 card because it's like I refuse to spend a workday's amount of time waiting for fights to start.
Yeah, I'll be live tweeting it, so I'll be right there watching it.
I say that, and then I'm usually on there tweeting also, like an hour after it starts.
I believe it will not be a fast-paced FS1 card. That would be really nice if it was, but I would be much less surprised if it took 4 hours for the 6 main card fights, and let's see, probably 6 hours overall for the FS1 card to show their 10 fights, and
we'll see.
That sucks. Anyway, on that note, thanks everyone for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Tom on Twitter at TP_Grant. You can find us both over at Bloody Elbow. Give us this video a like. It's the thumbs up thing. That helps us a ton. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. That's where you get all the latest videos from us. We'll have the 6-round knuckle up, all that good stuff. There's no event next week, so we'll be doing If I Did It and Prospectus and some other shows like that. But none of the shoulder programming for the UFC cards next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and see you next time.